It's Wendy Capewell, your relationship specialist. And as you are aware, I'm in the business of helping keep couples together and make their relationship the best it can be. But I also accept at times it's not going to happen. And at those times, we need the help to allow us to part company in the best possible way so that it's amicable. I'm going to be talking to Louisa Whitney, who is a family mediator who helps couples who separate to find a resolution that is tailor-made for them and focuses on money issues, arrangements for children, and anything else the couple feels is important. She's hugely passionate about the importance of good communication and believes this is especially important when couples have children. So welcome, Louisa, and thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed today. Can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Wendy. Thank you very much for inviting me onto this podcast. I'm really excited about it. I suppose to give you a bit of background, I practiced as a family law solicitor for about 10 years, and then I qualified as a mediator. And I found that I really, really loved being a mediator. It felt much more constructive and just better than the work I was doing as a lawyer. So in 2013, I threw caution to the wind and quit my job and set up my own family mediation practice.
That's fabulous. So I'd like to ask you to explain what family mediation is to me and to the listeners, and a bit more about how it works.
Okay. So family mediation is essentially taking a couple who have either separated or who have made the decision that they are going to separate and bringing them together to talk about what happens next. What are they going to do? Where are they each going to live? If they've got children, when will those children be with mum? When will they be with dad? What's important to them about being parents going forwards, and kind of all things like that, basically.
Okay. So do you focus much more with couples with children?
I work with couples that have children, couples that don't have children, couples that have young children, and couples have children that have grown up, flown the nest, but obviously are still potentially affected by mum and dad separating.
Because that's a huge thing for any child, isn't it? I mean, it's tough enough for the adults, but for the children, because they can have all sorts of feelings around it. Was it their fault? It's siding with one parent or another. I think it brings up quite a lot for kids, doesn't it?
I think it does. And I think people really sometimes get the balancing act a bit off, because you don't want to involve your children, but at the same time, it's actually important to give children an understanding of what's going on and not just kind of try and push it away. They need to know what's going to happen. I'm still going to see both parents, and both parents love me, and this is not my fault.
Yeah, I think that's really vital. I would agree with you, because I so often see couples who are warring, and I have to caution them not to get the children too involved or get them to take sides, because they're feeling wounded and therefore they put it on the kids, but equally not getting the kids to be the adult in the situation either, because the parents might lean on the children a bit much.
Yeah, and it's easy to do that, particularly where the children are a bit older, or, one of them takes on a kind of quasi-parental role because someone's feeling really fragile. One of the things I think that's really interesting is when I have clients whose parents themselves were divorced and they come into mediation being extremely keen not to recreate their childhood experiences for their own children.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell me a bit more how it works? Because I get asked that question, and people complain about, well, I expected the mediator to do X, Y, and Z. And I think it's more about how it works and what's involved. And can you explain a bit more? Because that would be really helpful for me and the listeners, I'm sure.
Yeah, no problem. Essentially, my role as a mediator is to remain impartial. I am not there to say who's right or who's wrong. I am purely there to try and help people find a solution, a way forwards. And we bring people together in the same room only after I've met with each of them individually and assessed that it's safe and told them more about mediation and checked that they're willing to do it. And then they come in to start to talk about things. And my role is to help them explore different options to discover which one will work best for them going forwards. So I do lots of, have you thought about that? How would that work? Tell me about that. But I don't tell them what to do. It's very much about empowering people to find their own way forward.
Great. And I think I'd like to ask the question, what is mediation not?
Yes, there are lots of nots. It's not marriage guidance counselling. People only come to me once they have separated. So we're not trying to repair the relationship. We are not trying to make things better. We are purely there to deal with what happens post-separation. And it's not a kind of quasi-court setting. I don't tell people what to do, which sometimes people find a bit surprising. I help people to find their own solution.
Great. I think that makes it much clearer, because I sometimes they don't know what they've gone into mediation for almost.
Yeah.
What did the mediator say? Well, I don't know what I was doing there. And I've had that said to me, and think, well, was that because you didn't ask the question or you didn't understand it, or maybe that particular mediator didn't make it clear? And I think it's so important to know what the boundaries are and what is expected of you and what you can provide and what you can't provide.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think also when you're in that kind of emotional state, there's so much information that is thrown at you as well that it's really hard to kind of remember things or, think, well, hang on, what was that role? What was that technical term? So I try and take my initial meetings really slowly. And I also have leaflets that I send to people afterwards that summarise some of the key information so that they can then go back to it and say, what was that again? I can't remember. But you've got that kind of visual aid.
I think that's really useful, because I think when we're in that situation, it's quite an official kind of meeting, and everyone's very highly charged. We can miss so much and get confused and can't remember things. So I think that's lovely that you provide that, so that you unravel that kind of technical speak. When I talk to clients, I say I don't do psychobabble, because I think you've got to use some of that, because if you're going to court, then there is going to be technical language used. But to unravel some of that and make it clearer, I think is...
Yeah, and I think it's important as well, because some of the language can be quite emotive. I mean, people still talk about custody and access, even though those haven't been legal terms since 1989. And they are such hugely emotive terms, custody of a child, access to a child.
Yeah.
I talk about when a child's with mum and when a child's with dad, because I think it takes some of the heat of the language out of it.
I think that's really nice, because it is that the custody word is it is very emotive. You're right.
Absolutely.
And I guess the other thing that I often talk to people about is the fact that it's the child's right to have access to their parents, rather than, well, it's my turn as an adult, and fighting that way. Well, hang on, what about the child's right, the child's needs, the child's thoughts and feelings? Because sometimes the adults can forget that this is about the child having the ability to see the parent, as well as the parent being able to see the child and spend time with them.
Definitely. I think that's a really important part of it. I also think that, it is hard when people separate. And one of the things I say to people is, maybe you haven't done the right thing up until now. That's okay. You've been in a difficult place. But what you could do is draw a line under it now and look to the future. And what would you like to do differently? What does your child need from you? Or, you can sort of look at, if you're in 5 years in the future and your child's talking about this time in their life, what do you want them to say? What do you want their experience to have been?
Vital, I think. How is what you do different from lawyers?
Okay, so if you go and see a family lawyer about a divorce or separation, they will only ever speak to one of you because they're acting for one person and they give advice to that person based on the information that that person gives to them. I see both parties and I don't give any advice at all. I give lots of information. I encourage people to think about things, but I don't give them any advice. And one of the things I love about mediation is getting that dual perspective, because when you're a lawyer, you only ever hear one side of the story. But as a mediator, I get to hear both sides of the story. And I never fail to have sympathy, empathy with both parties. And it's fascinating. You can see how people have reached the situation they have from hearing both sides, which kind of fills in the blanks.
Yeah. So when somebody comes to you, you're seeing both sides. Do you keep what they've said to you as confidential, or do you make it clear that, hang on, whilst I appreciate what you say to me, you want to feel safe, but I can't hold that confidentiality? What is your view on that?
Essentially, anything you say in mediation is confidential, but there are exceptions to that. And one is that anything one person says to me, they have to be prepared to share with the other person, and vice versa, because my role is to remain impartial. And if I keep a secret from one person, then I'm not impartial. And that's something that I make very clear to everybody right at the outset. The second thing is that if anybody tells me anything that makes me think there might be harm to someone, then I have to report that. And again, that's something that I make people aware of right at the outset.
And I guess that's the same kind of view I have. If someone is at risk, then yes, I obviously have to hold that, because that person could be at danger of harm, or so could the children. And as long as they have put something in place, then that's fine. And I'm not going to share that with the other person if that's the situation. But as for anything else, I do say I'm not going to tell tales on what you've said if I've seen you individually, but I'm not going to promise I'm going to hold that confidentiality, because I'm going to encourage you to share that.
I probably go further than that, and I say, anything you tell me, you've got to be prepared to share, because I just can't keep the secret.
Yeah. It's just that feeling of I'll encourage you rather than I'm going to tell tales.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But I think if people are aware of it from the outset, then they kind of know, because sometimes people kind of say, oh, I was going to tell you that, but actually I won't tell you that because it's not really relevant and I don't want the other person to know. Yeah,
and I think that's very fair, because then that makes it quite clear and the boundaries are really held.
Yeah, I think boundaries are hugely important.
Absolutely. On average, I'm interested how many times somebody might come to you for mediation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I start by having an individual meeting with each person, because it enables me to explain the mediation process, to get some background information from them, and to assess that mediation is going to be suitable and safe. And that meeting tends to last about 45 minutes to an hour. If once I've met with both parties, I think mediation is suitable and they're willing to give it a go, then we move to joint meetings, and those tend to be about an hour and a half. We sometimes do longer, but my usual practice is an hour and a half. And averagely, people tend to need between 3 and 5 1.5 hour meetings. That's not to say people can't do it in 2, or that sometimes they don't need a 6th, but that gives you a kind of sort of rough guide.
Again, really helpful, because again, it gives people an idea of what to expect and how long it might take. What are the benefits of having, family mediation?
Well, obviously I'm biased, but I think the benefits of family mediation are huge. Firstly, you are looking for your own solution. So it's not something that somebody else has decided for you. It's something that you and the person you're separating from have put together, because it's best for you and it's best for your children if you have children. Secondly, it can be really hard for people to move forward when they feel hurt, when they feel angry, and sometimes just having a safe space to be able to say, do you know what, I am really struggling with this, and you have really, really thrown me a curveball, or something like that. And actually having that space to express that enables people to move forward. And, I've seen the power of somebody saying, I'm really sorry I've hurt you. And that in itself can help move things forward, and you can hear those things being said. And those are messages that can be lost when you've got solicitors' letters going backwards and forwards and somebody else is acting as your mouthpiece. I personally think when you're sat in the same room as someone, you also take a bit more responsibility for things that have said. Whereas when you've got a solicitor's letter going backwards and forwards, it's quite easy to hide behind that. And lastly, and this is the big one, where there are children involved, if you have got that dialogue going and you are able to talk to each other, even if it's frosty or stilted or feels really unpleasant at first, that is going to benefit you going forwards to work together as parents of your children. And if you can do that, then your children are likely to be less affected by the separation. And it just makes things easier. If you look to the future, you think about graduations, weddings, all those kind of family events. If you can be in the same room together, that's going to mean the world to your children.
I think that's really good. Whereabouts do you meet?
Well, I have offices in Dorking in Surrey, and that's my kind of main base. But I do also travel about to see clients, sometimes in West Sussex, sometimes in Hampshire. I don't tend to travel further than that. I'm looking at putting together online mediation to kind of reach other people. But at the moment, my primary base is in Dorking.
So if you have an office in Dorking, where would you meet if you met clients elsewhere?
I have other offices that I've used in Horsham and other offices I've used kind of in the sort of Farnborough, Farnham kind of way.
Okay. Gives an idea as well, because people want to know where they can meet and what the setting might be.
I have, because I do YouTube videos, I do actually have a video that takes people around one of my mediation rooms. So it helps to dispel a bit of the fear if you can kind of see where you might be sitting and what the room looks like.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good idea, because, again, it can be all feel quite scary. It's like people coming to see me. When couples come and see me, there is that real, just picking the phone up is really scary for a start.
Completely.
And then coming and seeing a complete stranger, and as they call it, airing their dirty washing in public or whatever else their view is, then that can feel quite threatening and upsetting. So I think to make people feel more comfortable in the setting, I think is so much nicer.
Yeah, and I think particularly for people who maybe haven't worked for a bit or have never been sort of involved in business, the idea of going to a meeting with a professional in a meeting room, that is a really scary thing to have to do. And one of my things is to try and be as welcoming as I can as soon as I can. Yeah,
I think there's something about that. In a really unusual and difficult situation, to make somebody as comfortable as there is possible. It's not an easy situation. Anyone coming to see me or you, it's not normal.
No, it isn't, and sometimes people are almost apologetic, saying, well, I don't know what to do because I haven't done this before. Yeah. And I say to people, well, there aren't many people that make a habit of this. It's not something that you would be expected to know anything about at all.
No, absolutely. But I think people they'll start, I don't know where to start. I know, just start. Just say what comes into your head.
Yeah.
And then, well, I don't think I'm making much sense. Well, that's okay. It will flow. I'll ask the questions as I need to. And I think maybe that's the same for you. You just
Absolutely.
Allow them to kind of blah.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter if it doesn't feel like they're making sense. That gradually it will unfold and you'll be able to just sift through it. But people need to be able to just allow it out, don't they? They need to just get it off their chest, and then you can start working with it. That's my view quite often.
Allow it out. I love that phrase.
Yes.
That sums it up for me.
Yeah. And there are others who just can't talk. They don't know how to start and they feel quite anxious. So how do you put people at ease when you get those sort of people?
Several things. It starts with a friendly greeting and a smile from the moment I meet people. I always try very hard not to leave people waiting in the waiting room because I just think that kind of builds nerves. The power of a cup of tea, as someone said to me recently, just a simple thing like having a cup of tea with someone, and that kind of breaks down barriers. having a little chat before you start, whether it's about the weather or the parking or something, just communicating on a human level. It's nothing to do with why you're here or a professional relationships. It's just two human beings conversing about the weather, because let's face it, that's what we all do in the UK. So little things like that, really. And sometimes prompting people, making sure you ask very open questions, so you're not looking for yes no answers, you're sort of looking for a bit more expansion and things like that. And being really encouraging, you know, if people share something, they want to know that what they're doing is right.
Yes, acknowledging that we're human too.
Yeah,
because I think there is something very much about that. I get that. I know when I trained years ago as a therapist, and it was, well, you don't share things unless it's really really relevant, and you keep a blank screen, and you're kind of like a nodding dog and all of that. And it's like, hang on a minute, but somebody wants to connect with another human being, and feel that, yeah, they're talking to a human being who has got life experiences and isn't going to judge them. And I love your cup of tea. I think that's really nice. And talking about the weather, I do that. I provide water, but generally it's so they've got a glass of water. But I do share those gentle things, you know, that introduction. How did you find the journey? And was it okay? And, oh, is it raining out still? And what, you know, all those sorts of general kind of chit chat. And we'll sit down for a minute and, you know, relax. And then I'll tell you a bit about me, and then you can lead in from there. So I think it's that kind of thing that I think it's so important to make people feel as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you touched a bit on why it's important for children, but I wonder if you want to expand a bit more on that.
Yeah, I mean, people come into mediation in all kinds of states. I have people that come in saying, we really, really want to make this amicable, but we're struggling at the moment, right through to, well, we just can't speak. And they come in and they don't look at each other. They move their chairs so they're not looking at each other. And it's building on that to take them in a direction that enables them to kind of, you know, even just face each other across a table sometimes to start with, but giving them those tools to communicate, but also giving them each the space to express themselves so that each person understands where the other's coming from. That doesn't mean they agree with it, but it's just understanding. And that helps to break down barriers, which then improves the communication. And I think the communication is absolutely key, because if you can communicate with each other, that sends a message to your children that this is okay. Because where communication is basically just yelling or not talking, so you've got that kind of tense atmosphere hanging around everyone, you know, children pick up on that. And anyone who says to me, oh, my children don't know what's going on, children often know something is going on, they just don't know what it is. And human nature is that if we know what something is, and we know that something's a bit difficult at the moment, but we know what's going to happen next, we can deal with it. But when you just know there's something bubbling around you and you're not quite sure what it is, that's as horrible for a child as it is for an adult. And, you know, I can help people to walk that journey so that they get to the place that, you know, parents want to be in. They don't want to cause their children distress.
No, and you're so right. Children pick up on things. I hear that often. Well, no, the children don't know. We only argue when we're on our own. Well, hold on, that kids pick up on atmospheres. They know when there's something going on. You can't hide it from them.
Yeah.
Very few, I guess, is the odd one. But then equally, if you don't explain to children age appropriately, then they're going to feel confused or not understand what's going on. And that can be equally frightening if they're suddenly told, well, that's it, we're moving out, daddy and mummy are parting, and that's the end of it. That's equally scary. So it is something about communicating with children on an age appropriate level, I think. Yes, so you encourage, that's great.
Absolutely. And it enables people to manage arrangements, because sharing children between two homes can be complicated, you know, particularly where they've got different clubs or there's parties. And you need to be able to say, well, actually, you need to pick them up from Chloe's house on Saturday, or don't forget it's from football on Friday. And if you haven't got that dialogue, it means something can be missed. And then you've got a child waiting somewhere or not picked up. And, you know, that's when things start to become more agitated, because it's, well, then you didn't do this. But actually, what it starts with is that good communication, so that everybody knows what they need to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's vital. And that argue about, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and I always pack the children's things, you never bother, and it becomes playground.
It does. And you know, the logistics are really important, and it's something I spend quite a lot of time on in mediation, because it's those key things for children about making sure that your teddy bear has gone, or that you have got the right clothes in the right place. But there's an awful lot of discussion about, well, should it be 6 o'clock or should it be 7 o'clock? Who should wash this? And sometimes you do have to focus on what is important, and that is what is best for my child or my children.
I think that's so vital. So it's really nice to hear that you do spend that time, because as you're right, parents do want the best for their children, but because they're so emotionally charged, it can just get forgotten and left out. Not intentionally, but they just lose the plot sometimes.
Yeah.
I get it. I've been there, so.
Completely. You know, when significant life events happen, we don't function at the same level as we would normally. And that's, you know, normal and human.
And I think it is important to appreciate that whilst you may not be in a relationship together, you still have to have a relationship if there are children involved, because you've got to communicate with each other. You've got to have a relationship of some kind. Because
they're going to be co-parenting together, you know, till the rest of their lives. And it might not be as intensive in terms of sort of football picking ups or things like that when their children are at university or going on. But, you know, things happen for your children as they go through life, and you want to be able to talk about that and say, you know, how can we help them? Yeah. Let alone all the big events in their lives, such as getting engaged, getting married, maybe graduating from university, starting new jobs, moving away, grandchildren. I mean, there's so many things that if you don't have that good communication, you miss out on sharing it. You do, and you know, you make things more difficult for the children. When your children are planning their wedding days, you want them to be all about the clothes, the venue, the excitement. You don't want them to be about, well, how can I deal with the fact that my parents won't sit in a room together? Yeah. You know, and I have friends who have lived that. Tell me what it is that you enjoy most about your work, because I hear you're passionate about it. It just oozes out of you, but I want you to, what do you enjoy the most? I love the fact that I take people from a kind of dark place of not knowing what to do and help them to move forward into a better place where they can actually think about their future and plan and shape their future. And I feel it's a real privilege to be part of people's lives at quite an intimate moment. And the things that they share with you are really quite personal things, and you're privy to some quite intimate moments of people sharing important things or things that have happened or how they felt. And I just feel that is a fantastic privilege, really. And I love the job that I do. And as I said, I can hear it. Well, that's good. Yeah, and I share that too, because it is such a privilege that people will trust me enough, and I'm sure for you, to be trusted enough that they will share those moments and that personal information. And when you can see a better outcome, even if it's just a glimmer, it fills my heart with joy. So I'm sure you feel the same way. I could hear it in your voice. I do. And I mean, I'm also, one of the other things that I'm really passionate in my work is about different professionals working together to help people, because I think sort of historically it was that people only instructed lawyers to deal with it, and lawyers do a fantastic job with a lot of things, but they don't deal with the emotions and have no training to deal with the emotions. And I think it's about people accessing the right profession at the right time. I mean, I have a group of people that I put together under the banner of Surrey Divorce Solutions that offers fixed fees to couples who separate. and they can then access different professional services as part of that fixed fee. So they're getting the help they need at the right moment, and it's easier to move between professionals because you've kind of opened the door to people rather than just, you know, being sat in a meeting with someone and they've gone, oh, you should go and see a counsellor I know, and they're thinking, why, where, you know, who are they?
I come across that because people don't know where to go for help.
Yeah, completely.
You know,
and if they find someone they trust and that person can trust them to signpost on to more help, then, you know, that's a helpful thing.
I get that so often, and I know it's lovely that I have those connections that I can signpost people to as well. And it's important, as you say, to have someone that you trust and feel that you can recommend or pass people on to, so that it is that transition that is so much easier.
And that's about what we do, you know, making transitions or difficult times in people's life a bit easier because they can have someone that can give them information and help them to reflect on things.
What kind of other services are you connected in? You talked about counsellors. Who else might you have within this?
In Surrey Divorce Solutions, we have kind of counsellor therapeutic members, we have mediators, we have lawyers who can provide support and advice as part of the mediation process. We also have a chartered financial planner to cover the kind of financial aspects. And we also have someone who's an arbitrator, and arbitration is effectively like private court proceedings. So if the people weren't able to resolve every issue in mediation, they actually have a way of bringing a final resolution to matters by having a decision by an arbitrator.
That's great. Again, it's useful to know what the services are provided by your company. So that's really helpful. I hope people find that useful. Is there anything else that you want to share that I haven't covered, Louisa?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been really helpful to kind of explain a bit more about my work, because I know there are so many misconceptions about it.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it's been really exciting having a chat about it.
Good. I'm really pleased because it's helped me as well, and I'm sure other people. Hopefully, it will help others when they're listening. And how do people get in touch with you?
How can you get in touch with me? Right, so my mediation practice has a website, LKW Family Mediation.co.uk, and I'm on Twitter, and my handle is @Louisa Whitney. My mediation practice is also on there at LKW Fam Med, and the mediation practice also has a Facebook page. I just talked about Surrey Divorce Solutions. That organisation has its own website, which is surreydivorcesolutions.co.uk, and they're also on Facebook and Twitter as well.
And you also mentioned you make short videos. So how can people find you on YouTube?
Well, if you go to my website, it has a link to the YouTube channel on there.
Okay, brilliant. I'll put all the links in the show notes below so that people can find that if they don't kind of manage to get it all written down during this podcast. So it will be in there. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Louisa. Thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with me. And thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Good. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss any further episodes. And if you really enjoyed it, then please leave a review so other people know what to expect. And so for me now, it's just to say goodbye.